Facebook.
Okay, I just updated the settings, but I don't see the option in this meeting. Shucks, I wish I would have known that. I'm so sorry. I think I had no idea that you wanted to do that.
Let's see. Okay. So for really quickly before I let people in, Katrina and Rose, you guys are gonna go through the PowerPoint and then I'll ask the questions.
Either way, I think we're pretty flexible and what are your thoughts? How do you think we should start?
I think that we can start with the PowerPoint and then maybe we could do the questions because that would leave room for like if folks had questions who are here.
And then some of the questions will be more, you know, there'll be some answers to the questions and
Okay.
we'll be able to expand a little bit more perhaps.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm going to let people into the room right now and then we can get settled. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We were just kind of going through flow a little bit. Awesome. We have people still trickling in. We had posted this on Facebook. But I think we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to have to actually take 1 minute. My daughter is here. I'm multitasking with both my daughter and this. If Stacy or Abra, if you could give a little background and intro for the Alaska Native birth workers community, that would be awesome while I get my daughter settled.
Sure. Good afternoon. I know Abra is admitting folks and pulling folks in from the waiting room. So good afternoon. I'm Stacy Lucasen. I'm one of the co-founders of the Alaska Native birth workers community. And our work is focused on supporting Alaska Native people's experience of sovereignty from their first breath. Which mostly looks like direct service to Indigenous birthing families here in Alaska, to growing a network of Indigenous birth workers, primarily in Alaska, and then collaborating with partners and other organizations on updating their policies and the way that they work in support of our people experiencing more sovereignty, especially around birthing. And pregnancy and preconception and postpartum. I love Kaya. I also have a daughter. She is adopted from Hooper Bay, and my partner, we live outside of Anchorage and Chugiak. Normally in these meetings, when it's all of us, we would all introduce ourselves and talk about our roles as labor support companions and reproductive justice advocates, and our one midwife, who are all Alaska Native, but in sort of respect for Rose and Katrina's time and Kelsey's time today, we'll all be here and can chat, in the Q&A portion, but also, invite everyone to come. We have talking circles every other Saturday morning for those who are from preconception through parenting, or those supporting a Native family really closely in any of those phases. So even if you yourself are not pregnant, but like your sister is, you can definitely come and talk. And then we have events like this about every other month. And we have birth worker networking circles for those who, even if this isn't your day job where you support folks in all of those phases, we do, come join us in those spaces as well. Most of them are on our Facebook. All of them are on our website, which is nativebirthworkers.org. And maybe for everybody getting sort of into this space, Rose and Katrina, if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, I think that would be awesome. Please.
Thank you, Stacy. Hi, everyone. My English name is Katrina. My Yupik name is Bokek. I was named after my great-grandmother on my mom's side. And this is my mom, Rose. I grew up here. I was raised here in Bethel. And then after finishing school, I moved back to Bethel, and I live here now with my fiance and my 7-year-old daughter. We make Bethel our home. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in 2019, and am now currently working on my MPH with a specialization in Indigenous health. I work as a research coordinator. I've had this job for 2.5 years now. And a lot of my education and my career focus has been focusing on being a Native voice within the field of research and promoting and working on research that is based in Yupik culture. I'm very fortunate to have been raised in what you're going to be hearing about today. And I often reflect upon it with my daughter, as my mom was there a lot to help me through my pregnancy with my daughter, as well as a lot of Yupik child rearing practices. And I'm really excited to be sharing some of that with you today. So I'll just hand it over to my mom.
Good morning. Yuktun pani at kanuyal ngugok kasatun su Rose Domnick. I was born and raised in St. Mary's. My dad's side of the family comes from Qisunak, Tukahtalak. It's a community that no longer exists between the Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers toward tundra. And my mother's side of the family come from Tukchuk, which is below Marshall on the Yukon River. Not too long ago, in the healing work and genealogical work I did, I found that my great-grandpa on my mom's side comes from one of the communities around Galena, and I was really, really shocked to find that. But it's I'm glad I know that. My husband and I moved here to Bethel in 1984 after we were done with college in Fairbanks. And I had a good long career in corrections. I retired in 2004, having been the superintendent of the State Correctional Center here. And that line of work led me to a lot of questions that I I was able to answer in my second career. And just recently, I left YKHC, where so much of this was developed alongside very strict guidance and close assistance from the elders in this region. So I'm very happy that I was able to do that work, learn, and help put together a lot of program activities that the organization provides. And the reason why I left is because I really feel like so much of this is applicable to so many other disciplines other than just health and mental health. It applies to all aspects of life, and it is critical. Wisdom and knowledge, practices, and teachings that can make a huge difference in our population. Out here. So I've lived here since 1984 and now live here with my daughters. My older daughter has a daughter as well, so I am a grandmother of two. And I'm really, really happy that we are here. I'm very blessed to be able to do this work with my daughter. And I thank you for giving us this opportunity to spend this time together where we can learn and teach each other. Kuiana asechpa.
Get started. Okay.
I just want to say Koyana to you both and Koyana to the ANBC team for stepping in and giving such an awesome introduction. I'll be helping to moderate this panel today. Yuhdun Jugut Ngunga Mam Tresagamyungunga Klu. Dogwam Danaina Ashnanyami Witat Dunga. My name is Kelsey Ciugun Wallace, and I'm originally from Mamtresak. I actually grew up with Katrina and seeing Rose all the time when I was younger. So it's really good to be here with you. And I'm so excited to have you here. I help out with the Alaska Native Birth Workers community with a lot of their digital organizing, and I'm really honored to be in this space today. So if anybody has any questions, that later on we'll have a little bit more of like a open-ended discussion time where we can just do some, have a good space to talk with each other. But I think for right now, we were going to get started with your PowerPoint, right? Awesome. I just want to make sure you have the ability to share your screen.
Okay. Let's see. I hope. I guess I should have
tested it out earlier. Okay.
You should, at the bottom, if you pull up your PowerPoint, on the bottom right here, it says share screen. If you click that, then you should be able to like pick which desktop. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So I'm gonna I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
So just as we do in all different kinds of settings, when we do any education or training in Jalki Jahak or healthy living and well-being from the Indigenous perspective, there's a very set process that this needs to be done, because our Indigenous ways are holistic, and there are a number of reasons which makes it difficult for us to connect to this wisdom. And so when we do it in that process, as our elders have taught us, then we can make connection to this wisdom, and we make connection to it. It helps us to embrace this wisdom so that we can improve life for ourselves and people around us. So, so there are certain things that we're going to talk about first. And then the other point that needs to be put out here is that the Indigenous way is so it's holistic. It's not compartmentalized. So when we're talking about birthing, then we have to do it in this Indigenous way. And so when all is said and done, you'll pull out in your own understanding the wisdom and the knowledge that really focuses on birthing. Does that make sense? Define it.
So if you translate the word Jalgak, I understand it to be a very old word, and it translates to how not to be ill. So all of our way of life, our practices, our culture, everything that a person needs and contributes to a very healthy, well-balanced life, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and mentally. And so in that cycle, like I mentioned in our culture, it includes everything. So our beliefs, our values, our traditions, our rituals, everything that, and we believe all of that was gifted from, and those of you who speak Yupik might recognize Shamyo, which is our creator. And so that has always been at the very center and focus of our life.
And I also want to remind everyone that, you know, this is not wisdom and knowledge that belongs to us, belongs to me, or belongs to Katrina. Our elders have taught us that this wisdom was gifted by the Creator and belongs to Him. And so we have no say in who gets it and who doesn't get it, and that we're taught and encouraged that we don't hold this knowledge for ourselves, that it has to be put out there, and that it belongs to all. And so when people are able to internalize these good teachings and how to live well, it really is a way to gift life, because not knowing how to live, not knowing how to navigate life, and having a hard life, that is not life. So, so I just wanted to put that out there.
So pre-contact, and we're just going to review some of these things too. It's really going to help us understand what we had as Indigenous peoples before contact with colonialists. And this is a little diagram to help us understand what that structure looked like. And so as you can see, similar to that diagram you saw on the previous slide, the center is spirituality, so shamyo, and everything that encompasses spirituality. So that were listed on the previous slide, how we pray, our rituals, our practices, the values we live by, everything. And then on the next layer, we had the children, which were, as you can imagine, the very center of our lives. And they were, you can see in the picture, they were often facing the center because, again, spirituality guided everything. It guided, who we are, how we think, how we communicate with each other, the relationships we have with everything, and what's important to us. And so first and foremost, children needed to learn that right from the start. Post, conception, pregnancy, pre-birth. So all of that started right from the beginning. And then next you can see the elders, and the elders were placed by the children because they were most knowledgeable about everything that needed to be passed on to the next generation in order to live a well-balanced life. And not only were they the most knowledgeable, but they are the most equipped to be able to pass on that information, because they do it with love, and they do it with patience, and they know exactly what that child needs to learn. And sometimes, I look at the way my mom teaches my daughter, and it's beyond what I could ever do as a mom. And then on the next layer were the women. And then of course, making sure, everything was taken care of, but also being able to see over the elders and the children. And then on the outside were the men, because they were our protectors and they were our providers. And so everyone had a role, and everyone had a purpose, and it really helped to contribute to our identity, and to keep the community and individuals balanced, well, and healthy. And do you want to add anything?
The only thing I wanted to add is that this structure, how it was put together, is a way to perpetuate generation upon generation, this system and this structure, to ensure that every generation will be able to live well. So one of the things that we really need to understand as Alaska Native people, no matter who we are, where we come from, we all have this collective history, and that structure that every single Indigenous community had, Indigenous group of people had, was disrupted at some point. For us, we can look at things happening about 300 years ago for our region out here. And that's when these new people came and brought illnesses and systems that really started to disintegrate and cause harm in that system. And the whole process of take away that structure and to remove that way in which knowledge and wisdom was transferred to each successive generation resulted in lots and lots of harm. And with the illnesses taking place and then the children being sent off to boarding schools and are teaching our children being taken away, us not learning how to be good, effective parents and not learning how to transmit this knowledge, and the loss of our ability to take care of ourselves and govern and live in the way that we were meant to do, had a very, very negative impact on so many of our Indigenous people, statewide and matter-of-factly on a global level. It's come to the point where we don't know how to transmit this knowledge and wisdom. We are ineffective in preparing our children to be healthy and strong, to take care of themselves. So this is what it's resulted in. Go ahead.
So that interruption of knowledge, you know, it was wave after wave of illness, of forced way of thinking, identity removal, language loss, all of that history of colonization, ultimately, I think, resulted in the greatest loss, which was a loss of parenting skills. You know, how we take care of ourselves, not just as a mother, but the family that all helps to take care of the mom during pregnancy, even preconception, preparing for that, to child rearing, you know, early childhood. So to us, the most devastating thing was the loss of parenting skills, which ultimately led to multiple generations after that contact not knowing and not being taught how to live well, not having the skills to cope with hardship, and how to live healthily. You know, a lot of these strategies that were embedded within that culture about how to live, our roles, our identity was lost. And so we see a lot of prevalent issues in our communities, such as those listed here, like unhealthy relationships, unhealthy diets, lack of knowledge of food preparation and subsistence, and drug and alcohol abuse. And so understanding our history and what's happened and how that's impacted every single and continues to impact every single successive generation, there is a perfectly good reason why we are seeing these things in our communities. We're not broken. Nothing is wrong with us. But I think it can really help us to understand and motivate to begin and find that path towards restoration and, you know, taking back our identity and what it means to be Yupik or Indigenous or Alaska Native, and all of that may encompass, including pregnancy and birthing and child rearing. Do you want to add anything?
So one of the things that the elders really worked hard at instilling in us is that if we want to motivate our children, our people, our communities to restore identity in order to begin living healthy and well, the first order of business is always to look at the source of the change, what happened. So so that the process of healing can begin. So that's the reason why in our childhood job activities, we include education and awareness building about historical trauma and colonization. It helps us to understand that there is a perfectly good reason why things are the way they are. And understanding that gives us some idea, helps for us to know what we need to do in order to move away from that and begin to build health and well-being in the way that we're meant to do, to be able to use our own tools, to be able to utilize tools that connect to our spirit and our whole person in the way that our ancestors have. And I was just, as Katrina was talking about some of this, I was thinking about how in my own family, I was the last one who really understood and spoke my language. And so I could communicate with my mom. I could communicate with my dad. They could transmit some of this knowledge. I was able to communicate and understand my grandma, and they could transmit that knowledge, keeping in mind that my mom and dad didn't speak English, keeping in mind that my grandma didn't speak English. And I feel so sorry for my siblings who came after me, not being able to talk, speak, and understand the language as I can. How does any of that knowledge and wisdom about how to live well, how can that be effectively transmitted to them? And I can really understand the differences in behavior and thinking between me and my siblings who come after me. And that's very, very sad. And the behavior that I see is directly linked to that process of colonization. So that whole process, it shut the mouths of our elders because and that being so impactful has a lot to do with the fact that our language and culture was not documented. It was passed on by word of mouth. And so in that kind of a situation, it made it so hard for my siblings to be able to learn this wisdom. And so when we understand that, when we can see a direct link as to why so much of what's going on around us come from, it gives us some idea as to what we need to do to move away from that. In the last couple of weeks, I have been doing making some making a little program for my two granddaughters, and desperately trying to teach them to learn some of this. So I have completed the second session of the Chalhijahak cycle as a way for me to ensure that they are learning some of this, because I want to ensure that they are going to be healthy, happy adults, and they're not going to live in a really hard way like I have because of that history. So I just wanted to add that. Okay. So one of the pieces of wisdom that I have been so fortunate in understanding that the elders have taught us is that the idea that when we are born, we're born with our brains empty. There's nothing there. And that all of the knowledge and the wisdom that we need to know in order to live a healthy life has to be put in there. And that has to be put in there first and foremost by our parents and our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, our older siblings, and by everybody who loves us. That has to be put in this. And every generation knows that life is hard and that things happen and that struggles will come, and that we have knowledge about how the mind responds, how the heart responds, how the spirit responds, that can result in us freezing or making the wrong decisions and all of that. So we call this Junchkamichanenkauk. It is laying in the pathway of our journey in life. It's there. And so because life is that way, we need to put that wisdom and knowledge in our minds, talking to them and teaching our children and allowing them to have some idea, because when they come upon that situation and they're placed in adversity or not knowing what to do, that mind is going to search. And when it searches what they have been taught and told, that will come up. And the person will know or have some idea of what to do. So, and so that's why we had been so devastatingly impacted by by historical trauma or colonization, because it stopped that. And so our elders were telling us, like, point to that before they encounter that. Tell them about it. Make sure that when they come to whatever situation, that they're in familiar territory, that it's familiar because they've been told. And having that prevents things like trauma or freezing or being hopeless, or all of that impacts life situations can have. And most importantly, so that we can make a good, healthy choice. And that we are able to learn to recognize that there are some things in life that we can't control, but that we can control our response and our actions that will keep us safe. And then further, so that we have less of a chance to start filling our emotional backpacks with heaviness that dictate how we respond to the whole of life. Does that make sense? Just incredible wisdom. And so it compels me to make time and work hard at teaching my grandchildren, and then also to ensure that I teach my daughter, because even if I am gone, I want her and my grandchildren to have the best chance at a better life than I did.
Why is there two?
The next one has some other things. So,
Okay.
I think it does. I hope it does.
Okay. We'll
Go to
skip
the
the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what we call the Jelly Jagab cycle, or the life cycle. And when I first knew that, or right after my daughter was born, she was still a baby, and I spent a lot of time at my parents' house the first couple months that she was born, because that transition into motherhood was very challenging. A lot of new changes, and I asked, because Lila's dad he's not native. He comes all the way from Louisiana, and I remember having this thought, and I asked my parents if they're upset or ashamed, or if I should be ashamed that my daughter isn't more Yupik than she is. And my parents reminded me, and my mom reminded me, that she had the same worries. She had the same thoughts, because my dad isn't native. And she reminded me that what makes you Yupik isn't blood. It's how you choose to live your life, or how much that you follow the Yupik values and teachings and practices. And so this life cycle, as you can see at the top there, drawings, maybe my mom could explain it better, but one represents a female and one represents a male, and the middle represents a child. And this cycle represents everything that we need to know in life, all the tools, all the teachings, all the practices that we need to maintain wellness and balance. All ensures that every child and generation after us are taught all the healthy living skills, including teachings about pregnancy, about birthing, and all of that good stuff. So do you want to summarize things in there? Do you want to add anything?
So yesterday I was explaining to my grandchildren and their very close friends how when we follow this cycle of life, from birth to or pregnancy to eldership, that it makes it easy for us to connect to it so that we have some idea of the things that we need to learn, or the things in life that as parents and grandparents that are important to teach to the next generation. So the cycle has 4 quadrants, and the first quadrant is childhood, from pregnancy to childhood. And then the second quadrant is youth. And the third quadrant is adulthood. And the fourth quadrant is eldership. And so each of these are representing some very important things in throughout life that need to be taught, need to be learned, so that we have the best chance at living a healthy life. And it's all connected. So when you look at this, it's really hard to compartmentalize it, or to separate it into what's like birthing, or what is mental health, or what is physical health, or what's education, what is justice, what, it's hard to compartmentalize and to separate. It all fits together, and there's no one part that should be left out to result in a whole person as an adult. So and all of that is contributes to us learning how to live well, learning how to navigate life, learning how to help us, empowering us to be able to make choices and act upon and in response to our environment. So if you don't know, then you're going to make choices that can result in negative consequences, cause harm to yourself and to others. And so our elder Peter Jacobs, who was very instrumental in defining this and helping us to understand in our worldview how things work, way back in 2008, said that because we're not teaching our children, because we don't know. We're suffering, we're having hard lives, and we don't see the value of this. We don't see the value of our identity. We don't see the value of who we are. And we don't place a priority in teaching this. And because of all of that, then it really results in so much chaos in our communities, in our families. And so we have a lot of gratitude for him.
Okay.
If you if you look at this healthy living skills for well-being, at the very top, one of the most important things is to know who you are, where you come from, how you connect, how you belong. All of these things that provide important things for a person to be grounded and to be able to navigate life and to be strong. So we have all of these things around our names and identity and belonging, and that when you don't feel alone or disconnected, that you're so much stronger than you could be. So.
A lot of times when I was really busy with college when Lila was younger, and before the pandemic, we had tried to make a plan for her to connect more with her family on the Yukon. So in Pilot Station and St. Mary's and Marshall and stuff like that. And a lot of times when I bumped into people or elders who I haven't seen, I tell them and I introduce myself the way we introduced ourselves. So what our Yupik name is, who we're named after, where they're from, where we're from. And before the pandemic, I can't remember if we were at maybe like a basketball game or something, and I recognized an elder couple I hadn't seen for the longest time. And I brought my daughter up because I wanted to introduce her, and I introduced her as her Yupik name and my Yupik name and who our family is. And even though she didn't personally know my daughter or hadn't seen me for a long time, that connection is established, and that sense of community and identity and belonging. And that's a very important thing that comes from our names and the naming ceremonies. And we had a friend over last night, and Lila had just gone through a session with my mom about identity. And when that friend had asked her what was her Yupik name, she introduced herself, in the way that we do. And it really melted my heart, because I know that in the future, when she continues to do that, she's going to be able to make connections with people who maybe she hasn't seen or doesn't even know. So that's a very strong ceremony and practice in our culture.
So the next part of the cycle focuses on teachings and practices and traditions around pregnant mothers. And these these teachings and ways of behaving were very, very strict. Because this was a very, very important time for a mother, and it involved another human being whose entire life would be impacted at this very special time. We'll get more into it a little
Details?
bit
Okay.
later. Okay. And then after birth, the cycle goes on to into what the child needs to learn. And like yesterday when we did, we had focused on the first quadrant. I was focusing on the first learning of a human being, and we talked about love. And I wanted very much to have my grandchildren understand what love is, and so they can know how much their parents loved them, their grandparents, their family, that there was this unconditional love that they had. I also wanted them to know and understand all of the ways in which love is expressed, and it's expressed in providing service to others, in sharing, in respecting. Love is being patient. Love is defined as being non-judgmental. All of these ways, I want them to internalize that so that they can be, I want them to internalize that and understand exactly, so that it can make it easier for them to express it and to have those attributes strong in them, and always to know that no matter what, even if I yell at them, that I love them. It's not because the yelling, even if it doesn't happen, doesn't mean that grandma doesn't love them. So, so that those don't get to be defining kinds of things in their lives. I want them to know, I want them to be strong. And so these important things are the first learnings of a human being. And the parents and the family are to ensure that these are taught to be internalized in this first quadrant of life. Okay. Anything? So traditionally, it was like the boys were sent to the qasr to be taught by men. And then the girls were at home taught by moms and significant women in their lives. And so much of the role as an adult were taught and internalized. Not only were the roles taught, but really how to understand how each respective sex responded to the environment, responded to situations, understanding all of that, how the other sex responds and how the other sex's mind and heart and spirit responds to the environment and situations. So all of that learning empowered each individual to respond appropriately to situations and conditions and the environment so as not to make matters worse, and that it contributes to well-being, that how I respond and think about and act on a present situation has an impact tomorrow. And so when you have that knowledge, understanding that you can make the best choice, the healthiest choice, and what one of our elders always said was to remove discomfort, guilt, and hopelessness tomorrow. Making a decision right now in a way where it removes hardship tomorrow. So those kinds of things were learned, and how we responded and acted in a way where we could contribute to balance and harmony, because that was very critical in the next quadrant. So in this next quadrant, balance and harmony was critical, and the most ideal environment for children to thrive and learn and become healthy, competent adults. So if we know how to be, if we know how to take care of our families, if we know how to be a mother, then we can contribute to this kind of an environment that is the most ideal. And so much of what I talked to Katrina and try to get her to understand and learn and internalize was to ensure that she can contribute to the most ideal environment for my grandbaby. Because when there's some dysfunction or a lot of anger and neglecting of duties, or neglecting a family, or not living up to her responsibilities, it's going to contribute to lots of disharmony in the home, which can be devastating. And so I look back in the environment that I grew up, where there was a lot of alcohol and lots of associated with insecurity and hurt and fear and uncertainty. I worked really hard not to create that kind of environment for my children. And I want to ensure that my grandchildren are not subjected to an environment like that. I know what that can result in. So knowing your roles and direct impact on how environment can contribute to the well-being of each successive generation. Okay. And then the final quadrant is about eldership and your role as an elder, as a grandparent. And so somewhat on this part of the cycle, I have experienced so much in life, have navigated through, taken that wisdom and knowledge and applied it, and seeing the benefits and the negative impacts of doing so or not doing so, and seeing what happened, and gained a lot of this wisdom and knowledge based on that experience. And I have some idea about what tomorrow is going to look like because of what's happening today. And so this knowledge equips me to be able to teach my grandchildren and to guide my daughters and to guide my family and people that I love in the best way that will result in my grandbabies being healthy, happy adults. So, and the cycle just continues. It doesn't. It goes on to each successive generation. Want to add a little bit more in these next 4 quadrants, you're welcome to.
So I'm just going to go into a little bit of detail and give some examples of the overview that my mom just gave. In my experience through pregnancy and in relationships, in parenthood and things like that. So this first quadrant is, like previously mentioned, it's Mikkel Nguyavak, so birth or even pregnancy to about 5 years old. And so everything that we do is very critical, that we do as both the parents, the family, the extended family, in preparation for all of this. And so I consider this to be one of the most important because it really provides that foundation for healthy living. And so, you know, when we're born or when our children are born, we consider these children gifts from the Creator. And so everything that we do during pregnancy and then with a newborn is going to provide that foundation for the rest of that child's life. And so a lot of the teachings involve expressing unconditional love, doing things that allows a child and a newborn and a baby to learn trust and security and safety and love and respect and connection, and how all of that builds self-esteem and identity. And so it really contributes to, you know, who are you? And we nourish all of that by practicing all of the rituals from not just as parents, but as aunties and uncles and brothers and sisters. And so I don't know if, so like, for example, can I give examples or no?
Yeah.
So, and then I don't know if the pregnancy teachings are better taught in the third quadrant as moms and dads and roles and stuff like that.
And we'll get a little bit more into in that kuminuha.
So do you want me to wait then?
Mm.
Do you want me to wait to give examples then?
Mhm.
Okay, so then the second quadrant, like my mom mentioned, is we really get into roles. So roles as females, as males, as parents, as sisters, as brothers, kind of, you know, when you think back to that social structure pre-contact, what did that look like? And how did everyone contribute to create that wholeness, the kind of wholeness and healthy and balance and lifestyle that is most ideal for the mom who is pregnant and the newborn child who is learning all of this stuff. And so we're taught, like my mom mentioned, you know, me being a female and what that means to what I contribute into the relationship I have with my daughter's dad. And not only just roles, but how all of that influences how we deal with hardships in life. You know, like that piece of wisdom my mom mentioned, our elders knew that in our path of life, there was hardships that we were going to face. There was no way around it. And they knew more than anyone that you needed to get through that in a healthy way in order to survive. And so we're taught a lot of these teachings about how we respond to the environment. Like me, for example, how I would respond to hardships in my family and in my relationship, and how we do that in a healthy way, so that we don't contribute to chaos, so that we don't cause harm to other people. Do you need to add anything? Should I be more specific, Keith? And then that third quadrant is when we dive a little bit deeper into taking everything that we learned as adolescents and really putting them to practice. So taking all of those values and teachings and putting them to practice, using them in our family and in our community, and preparing as moms and dads, but under the very careful guidance of our elders and our parents. And so, do we need to add anything else? No? Okay. And then like that last quadrant, we really become experts. I want to use that word very carefully. I think it gets thrown around incorrectly, but we become guides. So like that structure that you saw, the elders were right next to the children because they've lived through it. They've tried and they've failed and they've used these through trial and error and have really become the knowledgeable experts in how to live a healthy life. And so they become our support system and our counselors and our teachers for the next generation. And so they do that with the most love and gentle in a way that they know the most and best learning takes place. Non-judgmental and loving and to ensure that all of that information gets passed on. So
now after bringing all of that out there, we could narrow it down a little bit. In the cycle, this is the second part to the cycle. Let me see. Let me start over. Okay. So in the cycle, this is perhaps the most critical part of the whole cycle. It's truly the most delicate time and the most at risk for potential harm. And so there were, as I mentioned earlier, there were a lot of very strict guidance around pregnancy. And I used to hear from my grandma and my mom, someday when you become a mom. And it was always like that. And so when they were going to pass on some very important information that I needed to have. So this proper guidance helped to keep us on a very safe path throughout this time. And I remember when I was pregnant and my mom would come to visit, you know, in the morning. I'm a coffee drinker. I always have been, and you know, I love coffee. And during my pregnancies, I reduced coffee, and I kept very close track of how much coffee I drank. But in the morning, we would be visiting, getting ready for the day, and I'd be drinking the only cup of coffee I allowed myself in the day. And I would get up and walk somewhere, maybe go to the bathroom. And then I would come back and the half a cup of coffee I left in my cup was gone. And I'd say, what happened to my coffee? And my mom would say, I drank it. And I'd get really, really upset. And she would say, you know, you are not supposed to have leftovers. I don't want you to have leftovers. So I drank it, so you won't have to have leftovers. So lots of a lot of different kinds of teachings like that. And of course, back then, you know, I'm thinking that this has nothing to do with anything, you know, it doesn't have any impact. Little did I understand that so much of these practices have a lot of, they contribute to building that strong mind, because the time of birth is so, it's very painful, and it's a time where so much could go wrong, and that so much of our behavior, consumption of various kinds of things has such a huge impact on the developing fetus. And so so much of this strengthens and disciplines the mind to where our first priority every single day can be the health and well-being of the developing fetus. So, and then she always said, when you first wake up in the morning, get up, don't wait, go out of the room. And so, you know, I tried really hard to practice some of this, even if it didn't make any sense. And I look back and I realize how much it contributed to disciplining the mind and contributing to the health and well-being of myself, the baby, and the process of birthing. so some of these things I passed on to my daughters. And I always encouraged for my family, even my husband, talked to that fetus, and I would go and talk to the fetus and I started cooking my firstborn because my older daughter lived with us while she was pregnant. And so every day, every morning, I would go to that stomach and I would start cooking the baby and singing this same tune every day. And one day when after traveling, I came and my daughter was taking a nap, and without waking her, I went to her stomach and I started saying what I always did. Then my daughter just jumped up from her sleep and she said, the baby just started dancing, knows you're home, and got all excited and so on. And then I always told her that that she needed to talk to the baby. And I told her, I know this can seem kind of funny, but when you're in the bathroom, talk to the baby. When you're taking a shower, tell the baby that that you're going to be a good, strong, healthy baby. You're going to be a good person. You're going to be a good listener. You're going to be loved. All these positive things. And then her question was, how does the baby know I'm talking to her? What's the difference between me talking to the baby or me talking to you? How the baby's going to know? And I said, think about your state of mind and your state of being when you're talking to me. And then think about it when you're talking to your dad. And then think about it when you're talking to your partner. And notice how your state of being is so different in each case. Now, when you talk to your baby, your whole being is going to be different, and the baby will know. And you're so connected. So it's important to do that. And then we also had all of these teachings that were for the expectant father and the family around. It was all of our responsibility to ensure that the pregnancy was healthy. And even for myself, I remember how my mom used to tell me as a very small child. I remember when she was expecting my brother who came after me, she would always tell me that the baby knows when I am being good or if I'm not listening. And so if you're not listening, if you're not being good, then the baby's not going to want to come to our family. And I would ask her, well, how does the baby know what I'm doing? How does the baby know how I am? And she would tell me, the baby knows. Baby's always around and it will know. So I would look around, was always searching for the baby. And then one day we went to visit an elder, and I was doing something that she didn't like, and we left. And as soon as we left, she reminded me, I'm always reminding you to be good. The baby knows that you were not acting nicely in that house. And so she reminded me, and then we started walking on this path, and I had this big question, how does the baby know? Where is it? that it's around. And I started imagining this tiny little baby crawling behind us as we're walking on the path. And as we're walking, I would just jump suddenly and turn around to catch the baby crawling after us. And I never found that baby, never saw that baby. What she was doing was to make sure that even I, as a child, was going to contribute to a healthy pregnancy. Because every time as a child I misbehaved, it resulted in stress for my mom. And the more I behave badly and make her worry, the more that the stress hormones were produced in her. So even I, as a child, was responsible in making sure that there was health and well-being, that she didn't, she wasn't in distress. So the father has a huge role in this healthy pregnancy. His role is to ensure that mom is never worried, uncertain, has a healthy diet, a safe environment, that the mother was never scared, the mother was never unhappy and worried about where the basic needs are going to be met, because that contributed to a lot of distress and stress hormones feeding the baby and impacting the health and well-being, both the mother and the fetus. And then so when we hear these teachings and we follow them, like walking out, getting up, the minute we got up, walking out of the room, and doing that first thing in the morning, it contributes to making sure all day long that your mind is focused on the health and well-being of the child. So let's think, for example, we hear a tune, and for the rest of the day, or however long in the day, it keeps playing over and over in our minds. We can't shake it off. Well, when we do that with some of these practices, it helps us to make sure that we prioritize and we always think about the health and well-being of the fetus. And then when I had my first pregnancy, I thank God for modern medicine. If my daughter was born 100 years ago, both of us would have died. I had a condition in my pregnancy where I had to have an emergency C-section. And I recall throughout that entire 3 or 4 day period where I lost a lot of blood and all of these things were happening. All I could do was focus on the health and well-being of my baby. And I was able to maintain and to be focused and to be disciplined. And so all of those things that my mother was telling me throughout the pregnancy resulted in my being able to maintain discipline, maintain focus. And those teachings, I was able to have a natural childbirth with my second daughter. I remember where there was so much pain and I was holding my husband's hand, and through every contraction, I could just focus on my husband's hand to be able to get through that and to be able to have a natural childbirth and to be able to focus on the baby and remind the baby and think that we're working together for everything that could turn out well. And so all of these teachings all contribute to that single event. They all contribute to health and well-being, to that single event. Yeah. And so this is a lot of what I just got done talking about. Okay, because we want to be able to have an opportunity for people to have questions. So really quickly, if you could just talk about this.
So this diagram is what we call our cultural iceberg. And so the iceberg is often used for many different things, mostly because icebergs, when you see one, you don't even see half of it because a majority of it is underwater. And so I think this represents really well a lot of cultural things that we struggle with when we're trying to communicate this with other people who might not be familiar with culture. And so, you know, when we think of culture, or when someone new comes to a community and they see culture, they often see what we call surface culture. And so those are things like, let's see if I can get this to, there we go. Okay, so visible culture or surface culture. So these are things that we can easily see standing far back. So these are our dance, the food that we eat, the language we speak, all of our art and all of our traditions, our clothing. So all of that. But what's really important and oftentimes not thought of or forgotten or disregarded is our deeper culture. And those are things like our beliefs and our values and our worldviews. So how we view health and how to achieve health, the way we love each other, how we express love. Kahuyun. So kahuyun is translated to a tool, to gently entice. And this encompasses every traditional medicine that helps a person become well. And so a lot of times we forget these deeper aspects, and you really can't have one without the other. You can't have surface without the deep culture, and vice versa, because when we practice our beliefs, when we practice what we believe brings us wellness, when we practice our parenting and how we express love, it comes out and it's naturally expressed in our language or the food we eat, or the clothing. So when my grandma or when my mom shows my daughter how much she loves her, that's expressed in the clothing that she provides for her and makes for her. and the dance fans, and when we pray, and when we want to practice, bringing ourselves, recentering ourselves, that's expressed in dance, and so many other ways. And so when we practice that surface culture without some of that deep stuff, it almost becomes meaningless. And it's hard to be motivated to practice those things. And so when we teach our children, when we pass that information on, especially the deeper culture, it ensures that the individual will make those healthy choices to choose to eat our traditional food, to choose to practice those pregnancy teachings. And it ensures that all of that, no matter what, they will be driven to make those healthy choices. And so it just, but it's hard. And this is often a part of the culture and back, in our history that clashed with outsiders because it was different. It was a different way of thinking, and it was a different way of being. And this was the part of us that was ripped away from us. It was taken away from us, which is why it caused the most damage. There were parts in Alaska where people were able to keep their dance, and in other parts they were able to keep language. But again, what was most vital to contribute to healthy living was this deeper part. So you really can't have one without the other. Do you have anything to add? Okay. And so, okay, so this is a nice diagram to help us understand, and especially we like to use this for when we do trainings with healthcare providers. And then in my instance, when we collaborate with researchers, it's really important for them to understand this, especially when those projects are aimed at trying to promote health. It's really vital that we understand the differences in worldviews of health, how we approach health. And so, and this is actually what kind of really led me away from going to medical school, because I really wanted to be able to bring well-being to our community, but from a cultural approach. And it's very challenging to mix and utilize that within like a Western approach to health. And so you can see in the contemporary box, there's a very structured system. Things have to be done a very particular way. And there's very little room for flexibility or adjustment. And it's rooted in the way of illness. There's, you come when you're sick, and there's a referral, assessment, diagnosis, and treatment. But as you heard a lot of these teachings and the life cycle and everything that contributes to wellness on the right side, you see the Yuktup way of health, or the Yupik way. My daughter says if you're Yupik, you say Yuktun or Yuktup. So, and that's all based in awareness skills. If you've noticed a pattern in a lot of the examples my mom gave, it's all targeted up here, because our mind, we understand how powerful it is and how much it can or cannot contribute to our well-being. We strongly believe that our elders are the most resourceful resources in our community, and today are very underutilized. And we believe that our way of life, everything that we do, is to promote healing and to promote well-being, utilizing our ancestors' teachings and understanding how we as a family and as a community, how that functions. In one of my Indigenous health classes last semester, I was really blessed to be able to have a lot of guest speakers from all over the country and in Canada. And I really appreciated how she said that she's in the field of public health, but she always starts off her presentation saying that her mom was the very first public health professional that she knew, because everything that she did for her family, for her community, promoting culture, all of our practices, they're a way of life that's healing and to promote health. And that is what public health professionals do, and doctors and all of that. And so if we are to work together and maintain wellness in today's society, it's very important that we understand these two approaches to health in order to navigate through these two very different systems. So
I just mentioned really quickly, can you go away for the slide? So what we tried to do is to really give a little bit of an understanding in all of this, and utilizing lived kind of experiences, so that you are empowered to be able to access some of what you heard, some of what you learned, and so that you can be empowered to go out and seek the knowledge with your knowledgeable elders, but more importantly, not only learning it, but also being able to teach it and pass it on to the next generation. And so much of what we try to share and bring an understanding is best done with our own experiences, because we're able to see the application of the wisdom and the consequences of the choices and the actions that we take. It's truly the best way of bringing understanding and knowledge. Okay, and realizing that if we do this in the abstract way, that it's difficult to gain meaningful knowledge and wisdom or knowing, because we don't live in that abstract world. And traditionally, our ancestors taught by practice, not by abstract. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I am so sorry that that took up a majority of the 2 hours, especially from this approach. If, like I mentioned in the kind of 2 diagrams, it can be challenging to digest it, especially in a short amount of time. And so we couldn't give certain information without giving background, because providing incomplete information actually is considered harmful. So I so appreciate you guys sitting through and listening, and we hope there's room for questions. Any other questions?
Wow, Goyana, Katrina, and Rose, I've just been sitting here trying to take notes and like digest all of this information. I think one of the biggest things that has been so incredible to see are the diagrams all written out, because it's just awesome to see like these teachings and these life ways to be put into like a visual representation. So I really, really appreciate that. And I know that a lot of us are probably feeling the same love, even just through this Zoom screen. But we have about 11 minutes left. And we did have some guiding questions that we were gonna base the rest of the conversation on, but I think I first wanted to check and see, because we've still got quite a bit of folks. See if anybody here has any questions for Katrina or Rose that you would like to ask. You can feel free to unmute yourself, or you can even just drop it in the chat, and as a moderator, I can listen or read it out loud. So does anybody here have any questions? Don't be shy.
Waka, Cookdick, and Rose, I was so happy that I ran into this. You guys did an excellent job. I love seeing this mom-daughter duo end on this topic. My question is, as you continue on, I'm just assuming that you will continue to provide these things as you're working through the process. And then my second part is, maybe because I am the mother of sons, and I'm wondering if there's going to be a male sort of version of this to help through all the guidance. Goiana.
One of the reasons why I left formal employment is to be able to provide this on a wider scale, and in other areas, not just in the area of healthcare. And then the whole program is set up. If you have access to various kinds of trainings to bring understanding and awareness, and hopefully to the level where you can not only learn, but to be able to teach and pass on in various kinds of settings. I had only daughters, and I have only grandgirls, and so much of this knowledge can be taught in a way where it helps our children to learn how to seek that knowledge to very specific situations. I was not expert at teaching like my nephews, but I could guide them in a way where they understand that how they are, how they function, and their response to the environment is different from girls, and that, you know, these are people that they can seek that knowledge. But whether or not we, you know, there are some men who are part of this facilitating, and they can, you know, they can be thought to provide from the male perspective. I don't know where this organization can bring this, but there are men who are very knowledgeable in everything that we just presented here. And we're fortunate to have these men among us. So what they can do, where we can go, is you know, it's possible to do a male focus. I hope that answers your question.
I think so. This information was originally developed when she was part of the behavioral health department at YKHC. And typically the training that provides a lot more details and more examples is 2 to 3 days. You know, a couple hours just doesn't cut it. And when this presentation is done, there's normally a lot of men involved. And so they're able to give their experiences, what they taught, their teachings, and, you know, and I even told my mom, and I tell Richard this, you know, I don't know what I would have done if I had a boy, because we grew up in all females. And so a lot of what I learned is directed towards that. And even like the examples we had, like I remember things like hearing my mom tell Richard, like, while I was pregnant, you know, do not let Katrina be in any distress. Don't let her cry. Don't let her be angry. And so I was really fortunate enough for him to, you know, take all of that very seriously, and he learned a lot of that. But I know the training that they offer that will probably be less birthing focused could include a lot more resources for men and boys and stuff like that. I'm sorry, we can't offer more.
I hope that was helpful.
Oyana, for answering. Does anyone else have any? I know we have like 4 minutes, but does anybody else have any final questions before we close out?
I just want to say Kuyanakpak Kuyana for sharing. And I just, one thing, I mean, I loved everything. It just blown away, but I really loved how you brought up abstract versus not abstract, because that's been my lifelong issue with learning, is that it can be too abstract. And I just appreciate how grounded and knowledgeable and generous you are with your time and energy. This was so beautiful. So Kuyanakpak.
Kuyana.
I also didn't have a question, but just an appreciation of how you shared all the context and the framing, and how it's all these pieces that come together to support, you know, that child and the mom that's carrying them, you know, and that it all works together in that way. And I don't know if you guys are seeing the chat and all the appreciation coming in that way, but just to highlight that as well. Thank you so much.
Kuyana.
I hope you were able to get something valuable from this.
I feel like I can't pick what is, I feel like I'm picking from a book of like valuable teachings. It's like, it's hard to choose just one. But I just want to echo what everyone else is saying and say Koyana Jaknak to both of you. And I really look forward to seeing and really, I guess, being able to help share this out if in a good way. Because I wish I would have known some of these things even when I was pregnant, especially, you know, about no stress when you're pregnant. Both of my pregnancies were very completely opposite. One of them was filled with a lot of stress and the other was not. And you could see it when I was having my son. It was a very healthy birth, and he's very temper-minded. And then my other one was very difficult. So I know that this information would be really beneficial for lots of other people too, not just Yupik people too. But we just got a couple minutes till we close out. So I just want to say Koyana Jaknuk, and I am sending you guys so much love, and I'm so glad to be able to see you on here, making me homesick. So I think with that, we're going to close out. Guyana to everybody who joined us, all of the guests here. And if you are interested, the Alaska Native Birth Workers community does have an email newsletter list that you can be part of, where we send out events that are coming up and updates and opportunities. And just a quick plug for our Facebook, if you're not already on our Facebook, to go and give us a follow. But Guyana Jaknak to all the other hosts and to the guests and to Katrina and Rose.
Yana, asashpa.
Okay, Birchi.
Ira.
Love you guys. Bye.